This is Michael Popok. It's After Dark. Do you know where your legal AF is? Donald Trump had a terrible week, starting with oral argument at the appellate court that he attended for whatever reason in the E Jean Carroll appeal that he took to try to overturn and get a new trial in the case where a jury of 9 New Yorkers, fair and impartial, 9-0, found that he was a sexual attacker of E Jean Carroll, responsible for punitive damages and defamation. And Donald Trump's lawyers tried in vain to overturn that. They ran into the propeller of a plane. That's how much turbulence they hit during this oral argument. And we talk about it on the weekend edition of Legal AF. Take a listen.
Here's why it's important that we continue to grow the Midest Touch Network and platform, because every corporate media platform pretty much out there normalize this. But could you imagine if President Biden or former President Barack Obama was up there giving a press conference about women who they've had consensual sex with? We're not saying even women who have accused them of sexual assault, but consensual sex, and giving a press conference for 45 minutes making misogynistic statements about the women. Now, Donald Trump spent 45 minutes saying things like, I would not have sexually assaulted her because she's not, and this is an exact quote from Donald Trump, the chosen one. She would not be, quote, my chosen one. There he was referring to another sexual assault victim who alleges Trump sexually assaulted Jessica Leeds, who said Donald Trump did it on a plane. And then Donald Trump says, so explain to me that I just go up to women and you're saying I just start making out and kissing them and they'll just let me do it? That was part of his press conference. Let's recall there's actually audio tape of Donald Trump introduced in the E. Jean Carroll case, where Donald Trump quite literally says that as a rich person, he just goes up to women, grabs them by their vaginas, and sexually assaults them and sticks his tongue down their throats without their consent, because he says when you're rich, they let you do it. Donald Trump is also on audio recording and videotape saying one of the favorite things for him about owning beauty pageants, and remember, he owned teen beauty pageants and other beauty pageants, was he would go in while the girls were changing and inspect their bodies naked. And because he's the owner of the pageant, he says you're allowed to do that. And that was one of the things that he enjoyed about running beauty pageants, as one of the things he did for his businesses before the presidency and, before The Apprentice, or right around that same time. Donald Trump is someone who was close friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Currently, Donald Trump's flying around in the Epstein jet, right? They wrapped Epstein's jet that he used to traffic girls and women, and they call it the Trump jet. Not a peep from corporate media. I'm not going to play the clip from CNN where after Donald Trump's press conference, they had someone say, look, we saw Donald Trump really articulate a powerful defense of himself right now. I was like, what? That's what you took out of this? Let me show you clip number 1. Here's Donald Trump with Alina Habba looking on, saying he's disappointed with his lawyers. Play this clip.
And I'm disappointed in my legal talent, I'll be honest with you. They're good. They're good people. They're talented people. Today at the trial, they didn't mention the dress. So the Monica Lewinsky type dress was a big part of the trial. Big part of the trial. I said, why didn't you mention that? And I heard there was a dress involved.
And I want to show you this next one here where Donald Trump doesn't, know that he was not the president in 2023 when the E. Jean Carroll trial took place. And then he further defames her. Here, play this clip.
I wanted to show up to the trial, to the first trial. My lawyer, who's not up here, not with us any longer, sir, you should not show up. You're the former president or the president. I don't even know when the trial was, but you're the president of the United States, sir. This is beneath you. I've got this 100%. The dress is negative, but he wasn't able to use it. Sir, it's beneath you to show up. I said, but wouldn't that be bad for a jury? Wouldn't that be sort of bad for a jury if I don't show up? He said, sir, you don't have to show up. I've got this. You shouldn't do it. It's beneath you. It's beneath the office of the president. I understood what he meant by that. And so I didn't show up. And I was found guilty.
This was last year. He was not the president. He should know when it took place, quite literally a year ago. Donald Trump fled to Scotland and Ireland. He held a shovel and pretended he was building something there, which he was not. Donald Trump was asked when he was in Europe if he was going to show up, and he said, yeah, I'm going to show up and confront E. Jean Carroll. The judge gave Donald Trump extra time to return and show up. Trump refused to show up. And there he's throwing Joe Tacopina under the bus. And we told Joe that that's what was going to happen to him. And he's blaming Tacopina for it, who's no longer on the team. But Michael Popok, why don't you break that down and tell us about the Second Circuit Court of Appeals argument?
Yeah, let's start with that press conference, just so people don't think we do what corporate media does, which is just, as you said, I think so eloquently, normalize it. Joe Tacopina was not the original lawyer in the E. Jean Carroll case. He came in the last 3 months before trial. The lawyer for the case who made all of the decisions, including about the evidence related to the dress, was a person named Alina Habba. You might have heard about her. She's standing next to Donald Trump during most of that, quietly allowing Joe Tacopina's reputation, such as it is, to be thrown on the altar and sacrificed on the altar of Donald Trump's ego and greed. She's the one that screwed up, if there was a screw up in terms of how that evidence was precluded or not, about whether, and let me back up so people, I don't want to talk in shorthand here. E. Jean Carroll claimed that she had a black coat dress that she saved for over 30 years, that she wore the day that she was sexually assaulted, as proven by a jury, 9-0 in New York, not once, but twice, in Bergdorf Goodman department store's dressing room, when she bumped in. She had the misfortune of bumping into Donald Trump, who she knew from around town, she being an Esquire, an Elle magazine editor, her husband being a well-known newscaster, and Donald Trump being Donald Trump, and living across the street from this particular department store as he was shopping for a gift, reportedly for Marla Maples, when he was still going out or romancing her. That whole dress issue was not necessarily like the Monica Lewinsky keeping of the blue dress, which she said had Bill Clinton's DNA on it, and we'll leave it at that. This was just to show it was an emotional, psychological issue for her, that she did not want to get rid of the dress. She did not make the decision until much later in life. And after she was allowed to, by a change in New York law, she was not initially going to bring her sexual assault by Donald Trump to light, even though in real time she told 2 witnesses, we call them outcry witnesses in our business, in the law, which is given an added measure of credibility as evidence when somebody, if it happens in real time, close in time to the traumatic incident, and you tell someone, we call that outcry, as if you were being attacked on the side of the road and passerbys heard you cry out. That's an outcry witness. She had 2 legitimate, very credible witnesses, both being in the media, one being Carol Martin, who was on CBS News. I grew up with Carol Martin as my local news anchor, and Lisa Birnbaum, who wrote, I think, the Guide to Being a Preppy, or Preppy Handbook. And so they testified that in real time that day, the issue that was disclosed. The dress, and whether it should have been, quote unquote, tested for DNA that would have survived 30 years, was an issue before Judge Kaplan, the federal judge. And because Alina Habba screwed up the issue, Judge Kaplan ultimately denied the DNA test, the requirement of a DNA test. Donald Trump would have had to provide his DNA in order for that to be tested, and he refused throughout missed deadlines all along the way. And the judge says, I've had enough. And you're not at the last minute, right before trial, now going to say you're willing to give us your DNA. That should have been done a year ago. So the dress doesn't come in. Nobody gets to mention the dress, but that is on Alina Habba, one of many professional malpractice screw-ups by Alina Habba in various cases. Joe Tacopina, and I'm not here to defend Joe as a member of the New York bar, even though I could. Joe Tacopina came in 90 days before trial. But when you and I've taken over cases, I think you have too, Ben, where you basically have to wear somebody else's clothes because the everything in the case is over, but you're being asked to try the case. But now he's got a scapegoat, Donald Trump, on the issue. The reason the dress never came up is because in the first trial, Alina Habba made those evidentiary issues, mistakes, and the dress never came up. That was not the focus. And we'll talk now about the Second Circuit oral argument. How it works is Donald Trump took an appeal from one of two of the E. Jean Carroll cases. Everybody should recall, or if they don't, I'll tell them now. There were two cases. The original case, Carroll won, is E. Jean Carroll suing before one jury, a 9-person jury, and she won 9-0. They found that she was sexually assaulted. They almost found that she was raped by Donald Trump, except for a technicality in New York law at the time. They couldn't determine from the evidence that was presented how she was penetrated, to use the lack of a better word, whether digitally with a finger or something else. And so they left it at sexual assault, which is still pretty bad. I mean, I would not want to go down in my history or have it written in my obituary that I technically raped somebody, but Donald Trump seems to have no problem with that. So the jury found that and awarded her economic damages and some punitive damages for a total of $5.5 million. Donald Trump appealed that, arguing all sorts of things. The judge didn't like me. The judge allowed in evidence that he shouldn't have, including primarily the primary focus of if I understood it from having heard it, the primary focus of Trump's argument had nothing to do with the dress. That may have been news to Donald Trump, who decided to attend that oral argument, but the focus was on whether the other, what we call propensity witnesses, other witnesses that were similarly attacked by Donald Trump, and the Access Hollywood clip that you talked about, the hot mic clip where Donald Trump in a production van with Billy Bush of Access Hollywood said exactly what he just said he never said before at his press conference, which was, oh, I get to kiss women and jam my tongue down their throats because I'm a celebrity and I can grab them by the P word because I'm a celebrity and get away with it. That was the hot mic moment. It tanked Billy Bush's career. Donald Trump ended up getting elected president because we didn't know about it until the very, very end. That got played, and two pieces of evidence got played. Natasha Stoyanovich, who worked for People magazine, who was doing a puff piece about the new marriage of Donald and Melania. Visiting, as soon as Melania left the room, she testified that Donald Trump pushed her up against the wall and tried to jam his tongue down his throat. That sounds familiar. And Jessica Leeds, who had the misfortune of being given a first-class upgrade on a flight, sitting next to a guy she had no idea who it was, but it turned out to be Donald Trump, who eventually, according to her testimony in front of the jury, put his hands on her breasts and molested her. To which John Sauer, during the oral argument before the 3-judge panel led by Judge Chin, said, well, there wasn't a crime on the books back in that time for touching a woman on a plane. To which Robbie Kaplan, who was representing E. Jean Carroll, said, it's always been a crime to sexually assault somebody on a plane now and then. I mean, that's their defense. He sexually assaulted her, but it wasn't technically a crime. This is what Donald Trump is left with at this point. And that may be one of the reasons that Donald Trump's not happy with his legal talent, because they make arguments like this. Chin also, to stay on the Second Circuit panel for a minute, and I've been in front of a couple of those judges before, it was a hot bench. Sauer has a technique. I guess it's a technique. First of all, he sounds like if you gargled with broken glass and washed it down with a pot of bourbon, that's what John Sauer looks like. He's almost unlistenable. Now, I know that he once clerked for Judge Ludick, should have been Justice Ludick, Judge Ludick, and I know he's allegedly smart, but when he's an oral advocate at the appellate level, he's terrible, and he's almost unlistenable. And at one point, Judge Chin said, whoa, slow down when you're making your arguments, because we can't follow them. Because Sauer almost thinks he's getting paid by the word. And he crams in, 100 pounds of stuff into a 10-pound sack. And he I guess he thinks he's effective. It's so distracting, and there's so much that he vomits out that almost the appellate panel can't keep track. But they kept track, because this was brief before. And so at the end, Denny Chen, who's probably going to write this opinion, and you have to get a majority vote out of 3 on the panel. He said to him, look, everything that you seem to be complaining about seems to be focused on evidence and decisions that Lewis Kaplan, the trial judge made, the district judge made about evidence. But you'll have to acknowledge, won't you, sir, that when it comes to evidence, that is something that we give wide berth to the trial judge on an abuse of discretion standard, which is very hard to overcome. We let them run their courtroom and evidence decisions in real time. And it's going to be an uphill battle for you to tell me that this evidence made a difference and or was necessary to the verdict and or even it should have been precluded. I mean, when Robbie Kaplan argued, and she got some hot questions too. It wasn't like there wasn't a hot bench for both of them, but it just on balance, it was definitely a turbulent bench for John Sowers, sorry. And we're going to get a decision there. I'm a betting person. They are not going to order a new trial, which is what they asked for. They're not going to vacate the decision. They're not going to chastise Lewis Kaplan. They're going to deny the appeal, dismiss the appeal ultimately. And it does dovetail to the second case, the Carroll 2 case, in which he's facing an $88 million, now almost $100 million with interest judgment brought by a second jury in New York, also 9-0 against Donald Trump. They're all 9-0, 12-0, 9-0. I did the math the other day on a hot take. It's like 54-0 in jurors against Donald Trump, state and federally, criminally and civilly in the last 2 years. And that doesn't include grand juries. It seriously, he's never won. He acts like it was Joe Tacopina's fault. Joe Tacopina didn't lose the federal criminal case for tax evasion against his companies. Joe Tacopina didn't lose the 34 felony count conviction. Joe Tacopina didn't get him indicted in all these other places. The only person that Donald Trump has to blame for that is Donald Trump. And so we're going to get a decision probably in 4 to 6 months from the Second Circuit panel.
If anything, Tacopina probably did the best of any of Trump's lawyers. He was probably right.
Right.
If he told Donald Trump not to show up. I mean, look,
5 million.
Trump, yeah, exactly. Trump
Right.
to be found liable for sexual assault and defamation and only have a $5 million verdict against you, whereas the second case was just one or two defamatory statements. And now it was, it's closer to $100 million. Yeah.
And what's the big difference, Ben? Wait, don't leave. What was the big difference? Trump testified in the second case. The jury hated him. And even though he had Todd Blanche, he got hit with an 80. They said, you don't like 5.5? How about 86 million?
Well, remember, Alina Habba was actually the one who was made the lead lawyer in that second case.
Welcome back. Legal AF, only on the Midest Touch Network. Find out what 40 million people already know every month, that we are the home for law and politics analysis on the YouTube dial. We invite you to join us Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m., where you can find our fully curated 1-hour podcast where we break down 3 or 4 stories at the intersection of law and politics just that way. If you're already part of the Legal AF audience, we appreciate you. We can't tell you how much. We wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at right now if it wasn't for the organic growth and commitment of our audience, and we thank you for it. Take that clip, send it off to people in your life, and invite them through word of mouth to join the Legal AF movement. If you don't know what I'm talking about, but you know other great content on the Midest Touch Network, that was Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok, and I personally invite you to join us Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m., either on this YouTube channel or wherever you get your audio podcast from. Just look up Legal AF. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.